What's up, design family, and welcome back to FittDesign TV. If you're new to the channel, we put out great content on sportswear design, graphic design, fabric sourcing, and manufacturing. I guarantee if you guys are interested in any of these topics, you won't be let down by the channel. Please do consider subscribing. On today's episode of FittDesign TV, we'll be looking at the top 4 methods of securing a hem, especially in the context of sportswear design. Obviously, these methods can apply to all fashion items, but I'm specifically looking at sportswear and the needs of sportswear. If you guys are interested, or if you guys are in a DIY situation where you're doing a lot of sewing yourself, watch this video to learn about the top 4 methods for hemming sportswear. Hey guys, and welcome to FittDesign TV. So glad to have you here. On this channel, we discuss all things sports fashion, graphic design, manufacturing, and technology. We'll discuss key topics, answer pressing questions, and provide actionable steps on starting your own product line. If you're interested in any of the above topics, stick around. You're in for a good one. So before getting into the main topic, we have to understand what the main issue is here. So anyone who's a fashion designer or designer who's done DIY garment making themselves knows that when we cut a piece of fabric, either along the bias or against the bias, you end up with what is known as a raw edge. That's essentially the edge of the fabric that's been cut. And typically with those fabrics, you end up with a very delicate edge that can fray over time because let's just say the fibers are not really secured along the textile. So the challenge for us as designers is to figure out elegant ways to finish up our garments and to secure these edges to prevent them from fraying, to enhance the durability over time, because our garments are taking on so much wear and tear. And in order to ensure the durability, we need to make sure that all of our edges are tightened up and that they're secured correctly. So this is where hemming, or the process of creating a hem, comes into play. So a hem is essentially what is known as the edge or the piece of a cloth or fabric that is turned over and secured. And essentially, I'll be discussing with you guys the top 4 methods, specifically within the context of sportswear, of hemming. Why these methods exist and on which items they're best suited. Method number 1, and something that's quite common in the sportswear industry, is using bound edges to secure the raw edges of fabrics. Let's just say we have a sports bra. We've cut up the top pattern piece and we realize that since we're using polyester spandex, we have a fabric that stretches quite a lot. With a fabric that stretches, you end up with a lot of tension on the edges or the raw edges of this fabric, and over time they can wear. So when they wear, they'll fray and the threads will actually end up unraveling. In order to secure them, what we can do is we can add a bound edge, usually made out of a welted elastic material. So it's typically a thicker material that's going to have some stretch to it. That's going to have a two-folded approach when it comes to securing this hem. One is we add much needed tension onto the edges of the fabric. Bear in mind, as sports bra, we're typically hemming the neckline and the armhole. So when we add a bound edge, not only are we securing those edges and preventing them from being exposed to the elements and from fraying, from getting moisture inside them, we're also adding much needed rigidity onto these openings. Right? We get this type of garment onto ourselves by sliding it over, putting our arms right through the armholes, through the neckline. So there's a lot of stretch that's undergoing, especially in a very fitted garment. By adding a bound edge, which is essentially an extra piece of fabric that we take, we usually make that piece of fabric twice the length of the hem. So let's just say we know that we want to use a 1/4 inch hem, aka we would want it to secure this hem as a 1/4 inch. We'll have to double the thickness of that hem. So let's just say the bound edge fabric that we're creating, we know that the hem distance is a 1/4 inch. We need to have a 1/2 inch thick bound edge. Why is that? Well, it's simple. Because we have the bound edge, we'll take it and we'll wrap it around the raw edge so that half is on the right side of the fabric and half is on the wrong side of the fabric. And then we'll use a sewing machine to top stitch it down and to secure that edge. What ends up happening is you have a thicker, more sturdy, more torsionally rigid hem finish that you wouldn't have had using traditional serging practices. This is extremely useful on the edges of a sports bra, on the armhole, on the neckline, on tank tops, anywhere where you're gonna have stretchy fabric, where it's going to undergo a lot of wear and tear in terms of the user experience of stretching those holes open in order to get their arms through or to get their neck through, and that's where you want to introduce a bound neck. The second method is an extremely popular type of hemming finish, and this is what's known as a surged hem. If you've ever taken a look at the bottom hem of your favorite t-shirt, you'll probably notice that it's almost folded in. Well, why is that? If you've ever cut up your own patterns or fabrics, you'll notice that on a t-shirt, the bottom edge is typically where you're going to get that raw hem. What you want to do is you want to eliminate the exposure of the raw hem to traditional wear and tear, whether it's stretching or the elements, by taking a lip, and it depends, it differs between garment and garment, but typically on t-shirts you have around a 3/4 inch tall lip of fabric where the raw edge starts, and you fold that into the garment. When you fold into the garment, not only are you removing the raw edge from the bottom, from the very bottom of the fabric, you're going to end up having the folded section where you're going to be stretching, and that's going to secure it a lot more because you won't have those exposed threads. When you fold it in, you now have the issue of how to keep it down. Well, that's where a surge seam comes into play. You'll flip the garment inside out, that way you have the wrong side of the fabric, and then you can use a surge seam and run it right along where the raw edge meets the right side of the fabric, and basically secure down the raw edge onto the front of the fabric. What that'll do is that'll make sure that it's secured and that things don't essentially get loose or pop out as soon as you remove any pins or you remove the pressure that you're adding onto it. And then in order to help it lay even more flat, we typically notice that we add an additional top stitch seam at an offset portion of the raw edge in order to make sure that everything lays as flat as possible. And that's essentially a surge seam. That's something that we see very, very commonly on a bunch of garments, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's a very easy method, especially when it comes to sportswear manufacturing, when we're dealing with t-shirts, and typically lighter to medium weight fabrics, it's the perfect opportunity. You won't usually see this on thicker fabrics because you are typically doubling the thickness of the garment at the bottom where you do have that folded over look. And if you have thicker fabrics, it might be a lot tougher to work with, especially if your lip is a lot smaller. So do bear that in mind, but surge seam is a great way to add a great hem finish to your garments. Method number 3 is called the turn under method. And it's actually one of the cleanest and neatest looks to a hem finish. So how does it work? Well, it works quite similar to a surged hem finish in the sense that you take the raw edge of the fabric and you create a lip and you fold that in. However, where in the previous method, we're using a surge seam in order to secure the raw edge on the inside of the fabric so that you can't pick at it, or in general, you can't have a situation where the threads are coming undone. Here, we're gonna fold the fabric a second time in order to completely eliminate the presence of that raw edge. So the edge will still be there, but we'll no longer be able to see it, and we'll actually no longer be able to pick at it, which will actually help it to prevent from fraying over time. So how does this method work? Let's just say the lip that we've created for our garment is 1/2 inch, or 1 inch for simplicity's sake. We fold in 1 inch. We now have our raw edge essentially sitting at exactly 1 inch above your fold seam or your fold line. Once we have that, we'll actually offset in from the raw edge 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. And we'll fold along that line, and we'll fold in one more time. The reason we're doing that, and when I say in, I mean inside the right side and the wrong side of the fabric so that it's sandwiched between. So we're doing that because we no longer want to be able to get at the raw edge. We want to completely eliminate it from visibility, and we actually want to make sure that we can't pick at it or it can't get unraveled over time. This is a great method and it's quite simple. The only issue is because you're actually folding the fabric 3 times in this case, it's only suitable on lightweight fabrics like rayon, modal, lightweight cottons. Anything that's heavier, medium to heavyweight, is not going to be suitable. Because you have such minimal space that you're typically using this type of hem finish, it's almost sometimes not physically workable. The fabric might be too thick. If you've ever tried to fold a piece of paper more than 11 times or 12 times, I forget exactly, you know exactly what I mean. It just gets very hard to fold and to work within these tight spaces. So you need to make sure you're using the right fabric And it's great for tank tops, especially women's items, where you almost want to add some more structure and rigidity. It does increase the thickness of the seam. Like I said, you are folding 3 times, but it can have the same effect as a bound edge in the sense that it increases the tension and the structure of that hem finish. And you almost get kind of a bound edge feel. It's a bit thicker, and overall it can be used to your advantage. But do bear in mind, it's not a hem finish that's suitable on medium to thicker fabrics. For those types of finishes, you can look at other methods like bias bound, which we can discuss in a future video. Last but not least on our list of top hemming methods is what's known as the hem tape method. This is a simple, neat, and extremely professional looking hem finishing method that you can do at home actually. And at the same time, it's great for use on bulky fabrics where you want to avoid having 2 or 3 or more folds, which can add excess bulk and actually remove the workability. So we've already discussed this in the turn down method, but here we're actually, instead of using a 3rd fold or actually a serge seam to secure the frayed edge on the inside of the fabric or the raw edge, we're using a hem tape. And the hem tape, the beauty of it, can actually be a different piece of fabric that can come in a variety of colors, sizes, patterns, prints, so it can actually be included into the design of your garment depending on your creative direction. And the way it works is, again, quite similar to, let's just say, a serge seam method. We have our hem allowance and then we fold in. Instead of using a stitch or a 3rd fold to secure, we're going to use hem tape. The hem tape is literally placed, let's just say your hem tape is 1/2 inch. It's placed at the center line of your raw edge. So your raw edge will essentially run through the center of your hem tape. And we use a simple top stitch to secure the hem tape at the top and at the bottom. Obviously you need to allow for your seam allowance, whether that's a 1/4 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch. It depends on what you're working with. But the hem tape is going to be secured and the raw edge is going to be sitting firmly in the middle. However, you won't be able to get at it and it'll actually be secured because you're using the hem essentially as tape to keep it down. And that's going to prevent you from being able to touch the raw edge, and essentially it's going to prevent any unnecessary fraying or wear and tear over time, and it's going to help prolong the durability of your garment. Again, it's a very simple method that can be incorporated into the core design of your item. I highly recommend it. You can actually mix and match different colors, or you can actually use fabrics for the hem tape that are stretchier to allow for more stretch or for more kind of tension rigidity in your garment. Or if you want to use a silkier, smoother hem tape, that way you can get a nice finish against this, against your skin or against a specific type of look that you're looking for. Hem taping is a phenomenal option that I highly recommend you guys check out. So that's pretty much it, guys, in terms of my top 4 hem finishing methods, especially in sportswear. Like I said, in sportswear, we're using quite stretchy fabrics. Sometimes they're quite thin. So maintaining the durability of our fabrics long term against intense wear and tear is key. And making sure that we have elegant hemming methods that are going to prolong the life of our garments, and they're going to actually enhance their aesthetic, and they may even enhance their functionality in certain cases. Well, that's exactly what we're looking for. If you guys think we missed out any key methods, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you want us to do more technical, detailed videos like this, please let us know. We always enjoy hearing from you guys. Thank you once again for tuning in to FittDesign TV. You guys are awesome. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.